Well, President Obama's plan to close down the Gitmo facility has run into a mountain of opposition. Many members of Congress really bothered about a key piece of the plan, transferring the detainees to prisons on U.S. soil. You can guess why that's a problem for them. Republican Senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, has his own opinions on the matter. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. First of all,
absolutely,
it is currently illegal for the president to transfer the prisoners from Gitmo to the U.S. soil. Do you think the president is actually prepared to break the law in order to close Gitmo?
It appears that he may be indeed. We understand that the president sent over a plan. I looked over the plan for the last 24 hours, and that plan says nothing about how he wants to accomplish it. The one thing that is absolutely certain, the law is very clear today, and it simply says you cannot transfer enemy combatants to domestic locations, and yet the president said yesterday he is looking for an opportunity to do just that.
Well, if he does that,
what basis he has.
Senator, if he does that willy-nilly, which he's done that kind of thing before, and says, okay, sue me or send it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, as you well know, is not a full Supreme Court. By the time they get to a full Supreme Court, he may be gone and the Gitmo may be closed.
Well, good news is that this is not just a Republican or conservative issue. This is a bipartisan issue in Congress where you saw overwhelming majorities in the Senate and the House maintain the law as it has been. And we've been able to do that year after year after year because we all know that no place in America needs another target on the back of American citizens where thousands could lose their lives if we move those enemy combatants to a location near us. And that's one of the reasons why we are thankful for this bipartisan coalition of folks who understand and appreciate the necessity of keeping the law very clear.
All right. Well, one of the things that bothered a lot of people watching the president talk about his plans yesterday was his belittling of those who were afraid of closing down Gitmo. Let's just play a little soundbite from that and get your reaction.
The public was scared into thinking that, well, if we close it, somehow we'll be less safe.
Scared into thinking, isn't it possible we are more safe with Gitmo?
There's no doubt that we were absolutely more safe keeping those enemy combatants in Gitmo for one very specific reason. We're not afraid that he's going to close it. We're afraid that those terrorists will bring their friends to our neighborhoods. One of the locations they're looking at is in South Carolina, Hanahan, South Carolina, where it's a medium security risk facility on the Navy base. We're talking about bringing the world's worst terrorists to a neighborhood, residential communities, a dozen schools within 5 miles.
Wow.
And what's this plan? Fulfilling a campaign promise, and it's not national security. There's no reason for us to have this conversation whatsoever.
I did not know about that minimum security place where they may go. All right, before we go, I got to ask you about politics. You're a big supporter of Marco Rubio. Of course, we got Super Tuesday coming up. Let me ask you about Florida in particular. Of course, that's his home state. Jeb Bush is now in his favor. He hasn't announced it publicly, but we pretty well know that. If he loses Florida, can he go on?
Absolutely. Here's what we know. Is we're not looking at any specific state. We're looking at the SEC primary as an opportunity to continue to gain delegates. Marco will continue to get more delegates as we move on. The good news is this is a cross-country run. It's not a sprint. Marco Rubio is positioned effectively to be successful in the long run. The key for us is to continue to garner support, gain momentum, and collect delegates so that we can have a serious conversation as we head towards the convention.
Do you think if Ted Cruz pulls back after all the animosity between Cruz and Marco that he could ever support Marco?
Well, you know, presidential politics is an interesting game. I think you can't ever say what will never happen. So all things are possible. Some things are more unlikely than other things, but all things are possible.
All right. Well, who knows? Someday you may find that out on a very personal basis. Tim Scott, Senator, thank you very much. By the way, my son is living in Beaufort, South Carolina right now, so you're his senator, so we thank you for your service to him.
In other words, he's my boss. Tell him I said hello.
Well, he's a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, so yes, he's everybody's boss.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here, Senator.